Hello YouTube. Today I'm going to be talking you through the installation and a quick overview of Wifi-Pumpkin. Now Wifi-Pumpkin is a tool for all fake access type attacks. Now I presume you already know what a fake access point is, but just in case I'll quickly go over it. I have actually done a video before about rogue access points, which will go into more detail on that side of things. Now what a fake access point actually is, it can be split into two categories, either a rogue access point or an evil twin access point. Now both of them are basically creating an access point like you get off your ISP that is totally under your control, i.e. people can connect to it, and as a rule they can use the internet like normal as they would on any other access point, and you can have full control of that, whether you are viewing what they do on the internet, trying to get their Wi-Fi password, or a few other type of attacks. Now a rogue access point itself is usually trying to lure people into using your access point, so you create a fake open Wi-Fi hotspot, so to speak. So it could be called free Wi-Fi or something along those lines, or even more cunning names that I'm sure you can think of. But basically you're trying to lure people into using your Wi-Fi hotspot for your own nefarious purposes. An evil twin uses exactly the same process, except for you'll actually clone an existing access point. You'll use the same ESSID, i.e. access point name, and it'll actually be a twin of that access point, hence the evil twin name. You'll basically try and get them to connect to your version of the access point, making them think it's the real access point, but again you'll have malicious purposes behind it, whether it's getting the Wi-Fi password through a captive portal attack, or using a man-in-the-middle software to see what they're doing on the internet and perhaps capture their login data, username and password, etc., or even capture their cookie data so you can log in as them by injecting the cookie into your own browsing sessions. Another use for fake access points is perhaps to intercept any downloads they do and instead swap it for your own executable, usually a Trojan or RAT, remote access tool, so you can have control of the computer. So that's what a fake access point is, and the two types, rogue access point and evil twin. And now Wifi-Pumpkin, the software we're going to be installing and looking at today, can actually perform both evil twin and rogue access point attacks. It's basically a fake access point GUI, graphic user interface, that enables you to do multiple attack types. Okay, now I've briefly explained that. I'm sure you knew all that anyway, but just in case, let's first get to the install. Okay, let me just put my window in the center. Okay, the first thing you need to do is install a bit of software. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with the standard install software with Linux and Kali Linux especially, which is apt or apt-get or even aptitude, which is 3 different versions of software that install from the same place, or the same repository should I say. Now there's also other type of software tools you can use in Kali and other Linux versions, and one of them is a software tool for installing Python packages, and it's called pip, which stands for package installation for Python, pip. So you do use that in exactly the same way as apt. Say with apt you do apt install and a software name to install something. It's exactly the same with pip. So first we want to do install pip, install, and the software name. We need to install service attack identity. Pip install service identity. So as you can see, it's more or less the same as apt install service identity, but it's for Python packages. So pip install service identity. Now most people, I'm pretty sure you'll already have a version of service identity installed in Kali, but this is just to check just in case. So we also want to include a couple of options so we don't get any errors saying we've already got it installed. So tac force. That option actually means if you've already got it installed, reinstall it. And another option we need, tac upgrade. It's similar to force, except for it means if you've already got service identity software installed, but it's an earlier version, then upgrade it to the latest version. Okay, so the full command is pip install service tac identity tac force tac upgrade. Okay, that's the first thing we need to install. As you can see, that will also install any dependencies it needs. As you can see, it uninstalls any of them that are already there and then reinstalls them down here with the latest versions. That's what the force upgrade options did. Okay, now we've got the Python dependencies we need. We're now going to clone our Git repository of Wifi-Pumpkin. So as usual, git clone and the repository name https://github.com, username who made it, capital P 0 CL 4BS Poclabs, but using 0 for the O and 4 for the A and a capital P at the beginning, / capital W Wi-Fi tac capital P pumpkin. Okay, now if you put space and any other term here such as hello, it'll actually clone it into the folder hello instead of Wifi-Pumpkin. I forgot .git. You don't actually need to put the .git on the end, but it's always best. So .git. So let's, just for easier sake of CDing into the directory and a bit less typing, let's call it wpump. You don't have to do this, but you might as well if you're following me. So that's git clone the git repository. The address https://github.com /poclabs P0CL4BS with a capital P at the beginning / Wifi-Pumpkin, capital W for Wi-Fi, capital P for pumpkin, and a tac in the middle of Wi-Fi and pumpkin, .git space wpump. Basically means clone the Wifi-Pumpkin into the wpump folder. So let that run. That'll take a second. Okay, now that's done. Now we need to cd into our directory, or call directory, cd. Call directory, and we called it wpump. Call directory wpump. Now if we ls list the directory, you can see some of them are already in green, which means they're already executable. And the thing we need to do is installer. So to run that, we do // which means run using the appropriate interpreter, and installer.sh. Then you need to do tac double tac, that is, install. Okay, now I've already got it installed, so I won't be doing that part. Okay, oops, sorry, it's not install.sh, it's installer.sh. So that's /installer.sh space tac install. I've already got it installed, but it'll still install it anyway. And it'll also install any dependencies it needs. As you can see, I've already got them all installed, as I've already installed Wifi-Pumpkin beforehand. Looks like there's a couple of new versions of the things it needs, so we'll let it get on with what it's doing. This will take about a minute or maybe a tiny bit less, depending on how much you need installing, but it shouldn't take more than a minute or so. yes, enter. Looks like I did need some things upgraded. Okay, that's totally done. We've now got Wifi-Pumpkin installed. Now we don't need the WPump folder that we created, as it's been copied to our user bin directory, which is the default directory, which means it can be run from anywhere via the command line. So cd ... to go back down to your home directory, or root directory if you're the root user. And then if you want, you can remove that WPump directory now. So if we do RM for remove, I nearly typed del then, as if I was in Windows, but yeah, RM remove, tac RF recursively in all files, which you have to do for folders, WPump. So let's just delete that directory. That's done. Now that that's done, we can run Wifi-Pumpkin. Let me just clear my terminal from anywhere. So remember, you will need 2 Wi-Fi adapters to run the majority of the attacks. So I'm pretty sure you will be aware of that before attempting any of these. So let's run Wifi-Pumpkin. So W Wi-Fi. It's not actually capital W anymore. It's just Wi-Fi tac pumpkin. As you notice, I didn't need ./ at the beginning because it's installed in our default directory. Okay, let me minimize my terminal. Don't close your terminal. If you do, it'll close the GUI that's popped up. So this is the Wifi-Pumpkin window. Now, as you can see, there's quite a few options here. So the first thing you'll need to do is quickly set it up. So if you go into settings, now you'll need to select a network adapter, and the network adapter here, I believe, is the network adapter that you're using for your fake access point, not the network adapter that's got internet. Let me just check that. Okay, this is going to be your access point name. Obviously, if you were doing an Evil Twin, you'd use the ESSID of the access point you're trying to clone. You can use any BSSID or a random one by pressing the refresh. Put it on any channel you want, or just leave it as the defaults. Now these are the different options which you can click for your man in the middle software. The things you'll be monitoring when people connect to your access point, what you'll be monitoring that they do on the internet. Okay, we'll cover some of these in a moment, so don't worry about it for now. You can also choose which IP range you want to give to them when they connect to your access point. You can use different classes. Different classes basically means which IP type, which you'll either have 172, which is class B, you'll have 10. what have you, which is class A, or 192, which is class C. You can choose any, it doesn't really matter, but try not to choose one that you're already using. So if my internet connection is already on 192.168.0.5 or something, then I don't want to use the 192.168.0. So I'll choose a class A one, which I know I'm not using, 10.0. Okay. Okay. Now plugins. If you click on plugins, these are the different things that are going to run when you first start your Wi-Fi, your fake access point. Now you can select one of these 4 options here. They're basically different types of ways of creating the access point. or should I say different software to use to create your access point with. Now each one of these softwares will have different options, and you can see these options by selecting the appropriate one down here. Say for example Pumpkin Proxy, which is the one that was made from the people who made Wifi-Pumpkin. So if we select the Pumpkin Proxy, we'd select the Pumpkin Proxy option down here, and you can tick any boxes of any software or any option you want to run with the fake access point. For example, say I wanted to choose replace images. If I click that, you then check if it's got a setting. Some of them haven't got a setting, which means they don't need a setting. They have a default option. But if it's got a setting, you click settings and set the setting. The settings of replace image is choosing an image I want to replace. Now what that does, it means any image I view on the internet, it'll replace it with whatever image you choose here. So it doesn't matter if they view picture of dogs, for example, whatever image you select here will be the picture that pops up when they select any image on the internet. So that's one option. And there's loads of other options here which you can do to mess about with their different options when using the internet, such as turn the browser upside down, log all the keystrokes they do, inject some HTML code to any page they go to, use DNS spoof, which means if they go to a specific website, which you can put in here, instead of going to that website, go to this IP address instead. So if you put google.com, for example, you could put an IP address here which reflects the machine you're currently using. Say your address was 192.168.0.5 and I wanted it to be Google. I could put google.com here and then 192.168.0.5 if that was my address of this machine, and then I could run a web server on this on my machine with a fake website, and when they go to Google it'll go to this fake website, which I'm sure you can think of different reasons for doing that, whether to exploit them or what have you. Obviously there's a lot of things you can do with that. Basically directs them to whatever page you want. So instead of going to Google, it'll direct them wherever you want. For example, you could use SET, the social engineer toolkit, and there's an option in SET which allows you to clone any website such as Facebook. It'll clone the web page, but it'll actually be hosted on your own machine. So you could do that here, for example, facebook.com, the IP address of your machine, use the social engineer toolbox to create a clone of Facebook, run it on your machine, and when they go to the Facebook, they'll think they're going to Facebook, but it'll go to the cloned Facebook page on your machine, and you'll get the username password. So that's what DNS spoofing is. It redirects them to wherever you want. Okay? And as I said, there's a lot of other options you can do. If you go through here, they're all pretty self-explanatory. If they've got any settings, it'll say here settings, just click it and set whatever settings you need. This one, for example, and you can have more than one as well. You can choose as many of these as you want. The bottom one, for example, beef. What that does, when they actually go to any web page, it'll inject this address into their browser. So if they went to Google, what have you, it'll inject this address behind the browser, so they'll still go to Google, but also inject this. And what this does, it enables you to put a hook into them via the beef framework, which basically enables you to manipulate their computer in various ways. Obviously you'll need to look into using the beef cross-site scripting framework to be able to use this option, but this option is obviously to be used with beef. That's another option. As you can see, there's got a lot of options you can do here. This one here, download spoof. You can actually replace any files they're downloading with your own files. So perhaps you had a rat or Trojan, remote access tool. you could put that in here as an executable PDF or whatever type of file, and when they download an executable or PDF, if that's the one you chose, what have you, it is instead give them this version instead of the one they've chosen. Yeah. Or you could do silly things like shake the page when they go on the internet, the browser will keep shaking. There's a lot of options you can choose here. That's a Pumpkin proxy. The other proxies from plugins that you can select, I'll have a brief description of what it does. And again, if you go to the appropriate tab for that proxy, it will give you some options of working with that particular proxy. You can only obviously choose from the plugins one of these proxies at a time. You've got the Pumpkin proxy, which is the one I've just gone through, which has got a lot of options, which is probably the best one to play with initially. Then you've got SSL strip and DNS to proxy. SSL strip is a tool that basically allows you to view all their HTTP connections and sometimes HTTPS, depending what version it's using. You can set any options here. Instead of the tick boxes like we had on Pumpkin proxy, you choose the drop down box and then set the options, and then whether you want to enable it or not. So you can go through them and enable whichever ones you want, setting the appropriate options for each one. Most of these are the same as what you can do with Pumpkin proxy anyway, and Pumpkin proxy allows you to do it in a much more easier way. So if you're not sure how to use this one, it's probably best to use Pumpkin proxy first, get used to that, then you'll be able to use this one much more efficiently as you'll know what it's doing. Okay. One of the other proxies is TCP proxy. Here. That's down the bottom here. In fact, I'll go into that in a second as it's a separate option. SSL strip proxy. That one counts for both of these. They'll both use this option, but they'll be using different software to connect the SSL strip. And it'll give a brief description here of the actual software it's using to connect the SSL strip. So basically choose which one which works best for you. But as I did say, it's probably best to start with Pumpkin proxy to get an idea of what the different options do. Now the next one is the backdoor factory proxy. Now this one, as you can see, it hasn't got an option here to change anything, because you change that here. So if I click change, this one actually allows you to connect. Once I connect and download anything, it allows you to swap that download, like you had the option in the Pumpkin proxy, but this is built specifically for that. And if you there is actually a program on Kali called Backdoor Factory, and that all generates various type of Trojans or rats, as we've already mentioned. Any of those different ones you generate using the Backdoor Factory, you can then set this option to use that generated Trojan. So you first use Backdoor Factory to generate a Trojan. You'll have to read up on Backdoor Factory and how to use it. It's pretty straightforward. And then once you've generated the file type you want, using either shellcode, swapping an executable, or going to a certain web page, etc., etc., you'll then set these options appropriately depending on what Backdoor Factory exploit you created. So that's that proxy. That's actually a more advanced proxy than either of the other ones. In a way, the more advanced type of proxy goes down the list. So Pumpkin proxy is the easiest one to work with. Then one of these two, which both do the same things using these options, but they do it in different ways. But they do give the same options, which you enable and change via a drop down box. And enable it. The Backdoor Factory proxy, you change all its options by clicking here, and it's basically you change the options to reflect whatever backdoor file you generated using Backdoor Factory, which is a separate program like I mentioned, and you'd reflect the options here. as you can see, backdoor factory files that you generate can interact with Metasploit. So you can see why this is a more powerful option of the proxies. But it's a lot more advanced to use as well. So I do suggest starting with Pumpkin Proxy and working your way down. So Pumpkin Proxy is this one. Select your options, quite easy to set. If they've got a settings tab, then you set up the appropriate settings depending on the option you chose. You can choose as many as you want. Obviously, the more you choose, then the more chance it's got of causing a problem. So it's usually best just to choose one or two, depending on what you want to do with the person who's connected to your fake access point or Evil Twin. Then the SSL strip one, depending on what proxy type you use to connect them to SSL strip. Basically try both, depending on which one works better for you. It'll give a description of which proxy does specifically what to connect SSL strip here, and you set the options in the drop down box here, such as beef up, like we described before, connecting to the beef framework. You'd actually paste in the earlier, which you'll get from beef, which you'll need to hook into their browser and then enable it. Okay, so that's the proxies. Go back to plugins. Now down here, these are other options which you'll get, which if we go back to settings, you'll notice you've got responder here. You've also got backdoor factory proxy here, which enables you to, if say for example I tick that, I don't want to confuse you here, but say I clicked backdoor factory proxy here and went to plugin and chose Pumpkin Proxy. You just go back to settings to show you. You still be able to use the Pumpkin Proxy options, but because I'd also selected backdoor factory here, I could then go to plugins, change backdoor factory, and still interact with backdoor factory. Okay, but again, that's a bit more advanced, and that'll come at a later date once you understand how to use backdoor proxy itself. So first you want to play with this one, then one of these two, and then finally this one once you know to interact with Metasploit or other Trojan type softwares, especially the things you generate via backdoor factory software. And once you get used to that, you can then start playing with the other proxies if they connect to users better, or how you prefer in an easier way that you understand more. And you can also use these with backdoor proxy by selecting these options, going back to settings and just ticking backdoor proxy, so you can effectively use both. The same with the DNS to proxy. It's just another way of connecting. Okay, but as for now, don't worry about them. I don't want to confuse you. So until you know completely what Wifi-Pumpkin's doing, it's probably best to ignore these two. Now this one now, responder, you can tick that with any of these proxies, any of these four proxies you choose to connect to them with. And then you tick this box to enable the options and click change to change the options. And what this does, it's a man in the middle type software. So what it does, once they connect to your access point, it will get various information of their internet usage, depending on what information you set here. Again, you can swap executables that they download and give them your executable instead of the one that they think they're downloading. You can inject HTML code, cross-site scripting type of way. Or you can even insert your own SSL certificates for use for HTTPS sites. You can serve HTML, which means serve your own web page. So if they go to a website, basically it'll start with whatever page you're serving. You can even serve an executable. Capture multiple credentials, which means when they're connecting, it'll try and capture their SMB credentials and any other credentials which are actively used on the internet, such as login information. But this option will also try to get their SMB details if they have SMB enabled on their machine. And other options, you can turn HTTPS on, HTTP. So anything they use on the internet, you can follow depending on what options you choose on Responder. Responder is quite a nice tool. Remember, when they're on the internet, most pages nowadays will be at HTTPS. So if you want to capture any data they do on HTTPS sites, you'd have to enable this option. If you know they're going to be connecting to an FTP site, then you could enable this option to capture everything they do on the FTP site, as well as their login details, etc, etc. So Responder is a nice tool to use and can be used with any of the other proxies. Okay, just by ticking here and ticking here. Okay, so that's the 4 proxies. This is the default way of connecting through Wifi-Pumpkin. Whether you're making a fake open Wi-Fi hotspot, or doing an evil twin method and cloning someone's access point by using the name they're using. We've already gone through these options, which is setting up the IP range which they'll connect to use the internet. Make sure it's not the one that you're using on your internet, obviously. Here you can even, if you want, set a Wi-Fi password. Say you were using an evil twin and you actually knew their Wi-Fi password, you could actually put it in here so it seems more genuine, using WPA2 for example, or you can use these options to choose your encryption, WPA, WEP. Although I've always thought, if you know their Wi-Fi password, why would you be using an evil twin anyway? It makes no sense, but you do have that option. Perhaps you want to make your fake access, your rogue access point, should I say, your fake Wi-Fi hotspot more realistic, and perhaps you've posted a notice board on a shop window saying Wi-Fi password of this shop is such and such, and created a fake access point so that people will think they're connecting to the Wi-Fi at the shop, even though they're not, they're connecting to yours. Perhaps you could use that option for that reason, or I'm sure you can think of other things. So you can set a password if you really want to. So that's basically how to use the default options of Wifi-Pumpkin. Okay. Now TCP proxy. If we go back to plugins, just like we selected Responder, which can be used with any of these proxies, you can also do the same with TCP proxy. Now what this does, regardless of the options you set using whichever proxy you choose, say we'll stick with Pumpkin proxy, regardless of what options we chose here, if, go back to plugins, we'd had TCP proxy selected, what this does is tries to sniff all the things they do on the internet regardless of what options we've chosen here. So it does a man-in-the-middle attack regardless of what other options we've chosen in Pumpkin proxy. And we set that up in the TCP proxy settings, i.e. we want to capture their emails. If they connect to an email server, then try to capture that. If they connect to an FTP site, try and capture those details. Kerberos, which is their Windows login, try to capture that details, etc, etc. That's TCP proxy, which again you can use Responder and TCP proxy with any of the proxies here. I would suggest initially to just connect using one of these and then build upon it. Once you get used to using the options of Pumpkin proxy, turn that on whilst you use the options of Pumpkin proxy, and then perhaps play with Responder without that at the same time, and then perhaps play with both of them on using that, and then perhaps you move on to the next proxy, play with these options, and then once you're satisfied with the options of SSL strip proxies, you could turn that on and that on, etc, etc, and then go to the backdoor proxy, trying to get a backdoor factory Trojan which you've made on their machine, and you could also use man-in-the-middle software at the same time. Okay, so basically these 4 proxies are the ways in which you manipulate the person who's connected to your access point, and these options are man-in-the-middle software, different ways of doing man-in-the-middle attacks as well as the options you've chose with your proxy. So think of them that way. These are your proxies, these are your man in the middle attacks, as well as your proxy options. So I'm sure you can already see the power of Wifi-Pumpkin. Now, once you've selected the options you want, and you've set up your access point how you want it, you click start. So let me do a quick one. Say I simply wanted to log the keystrokes, put a key logger. So anything they're typing on the keyboard, I want to capture that. Check that. I want to call it, I don't know, free Wi-Fi. I'll change my MAC address BSSID to this random one. I'll leave it on channel 11. This is my host adapter. I'm using 192.168 on my machine for my local internet address, so I'll use a different one to give them internet, so I'll use 10.0. Okay, save them settings. Now I've done that, can't grab it. Now I've done that, I can press start. Okay. Now, like, as you can see, it's now on. So my access point is now running. If I was to check on my phone, for example, or I can even check on my other Wi-Fi adapter while I'm here. Select network. As you can see, there's my free Wi-Fi, my fake access point. I don't want to connect to that, because if I connect to that, then my internet will be turned off, so I can't give myself internet, so some of the options may fail. But if anyone else connected, I can then go down to any of these three options at the bottom. So images cap, or capture any images which they view on the internet. Activity monitor. Anything they do on the internet, any addresses, any websites they go to will be here. Any login data they use will go here. All this will be obviously dependent on the appropriate options being set here. So obviously, if I wanted to activity monitor, if I wanted to capture what sites they went to and any login details, I'd need the appropriate option set in my proxy, as well as a man in the middle software running, like we said earlier. So responder, for example. We go to stations. I'm not actually sure what this does. I think it's meant to show your any access points in range, perhaps when I'm not connected. I don't know, but I've never actually seen the point of this one. Never mind, it's not really important anyway. As long as you can view their activity using the man in the middle software, presuming you've chosen it, and any images they view. Again, you'll need man in the middle software running to view any images that they view. So those are the different options here. Now, that's not all you can do with Wifi-Pumpkin. Also, let me just connect again to the access point I created. Wait for this to fill up and then it's totally built. You also get some general information when you go to home. Your uptime, threads. Don't worry about what threads does. I don't really want to confuse you. It's nothing really that should concern you. Here you can see how many clients are connected to your fake access point. You can see that it's on here. What proxy you're using or what plugin. The connection here, you'll notice I put WLAN, let me just go back to the settings, I actually put WLAN 1 here for my network adapter, but it's saying WLAN 0 here. That's because WLAN 1 is the network adapter I'm using to host my fake access point, and the connection, my internet connection, what's giving anyone who connects to my fake access point on WLAN 1, what's giving them internet is this one, WLAN 0, which has got my internet connection on it. So that's what that means, which is why you'll need two internet adapters. So the connection is the one that you're connected to the internet with, and you'll use the one that you're hosting your fake access point with in network adapter here. Okay. So if we go back to home, anyone who connects, you'll see client 1 if someone connected. You'll see their details here. The device that's connected, say it was a phone, it could say Samsung Galaxy for example. The IP address you've assigned them, depending on what options you chose in settings, when we chose our class A address or class B, what have you. That'll come here, what IP address it's been assigned to them. And the MAC address of their Wi-Fi adapter, as well as if it knows the vendor of their Wi-Fi adapter, it'll list it here as well. And then if you've got more than one client, they'll be listed one after the other. So that's what Home does. Gives you a view of the general your access point details and all the people connected. Okay, just a quick recap. So you've got Home, will tell you all the information about your access point once you've created it and started it up here. Any people that connect your access point, their details will be listed here. When you're setting up your access point, you'll first go to settings and set up the main details of your access point here. Then you go down to plugins and you'll select how you want your access point to gather information, or what you want to do to the people connected to your access point. This is what proxy you want to choose to do that with, will be chosen here. Any man in the middle additional options will be chosen here by tick boxes. And if any of these have options, you change them here. It'll say settings change. If it doesn't, then you change them via this panel on the left. So once they're connected, presuming you've got one of these man in the middle ticked, usually TCP proxy, you can capture the images of you on the internet, or activity monitor, any sites to go to, or any login details. So they log into Gmail for example. It'd have their username, password, Gmail address here, etc. Okay. So that's that. Again, stations doesn't seem to do a lot, so I wouldn't worry about that. Now, that's not all you can do with Wifi-Pumpkin, although that is obviously the main things. If you go in these options up here, you see you've got a logger to report anything that happens while it's running, whether it's activity you captured, etc. You can view the log or clear it. You've also got general options for Wifi-Pumpkin, which the default options will work fine, but if you want to play around with those, you can. Now, view is your status board. If you're watching, I'll turn this off and watch your home window. You'll notice I've only got my client details left, so that's in your view menu. If you click status board, so it's click status dashboard, you'll get your access point details and uptime. Now in tools, you can activate DriftNet here. Now DriftNet is the feature that gives you your image capture ability. So if you want to view images that they view on the internet, you'll need to activate Active DriftNet. And that'll bring up a new window. So as they view images, they'll appear in here. And as they view new ones, they'll get transferred in here for you to capture. Okay, that's DriftNet. The server. This is a bit more advanced. Let me quickly cover these for you, and let me stop my server for now. Go back to home. Okay, server. Now if I quickly bring up the top one, Phishing Manager. I'm sure you know what phishing is. Phishing means giving a fake, in basic terms it means giving a fake website which you control and trying to capture details off them. You're phishing for information. You can do that in various ways. You can either clone a website clone, type the website you want to clone, facebook.com for example, then the IP address of your machine where you want to host the cloned page. So if mine was 192.168.0.5, I'll type that here. The port I want to host it on, usually 80, or 443 if you want to host it on an HTTPS. And then I'll start the server. So for example, say I want to do Facebook. Oops. Okay, start server. Okay, that's started. Even that probably wouldn't work because I haven't put my IP address in here. I should have put 192.168.0.5. But that'll clone Facebook. Okay. Now you may be thinking, well, how would they connect to this? Even though I cloned Facebook and I'm hosting the Facebook page on my site, so obviously you can capture their Facebook login details if they go to Facebook. How will they connect to it? Well, this is done, like I said earlier, when you've got your different proxy attacks and you wanted to DNS spoof, for example, settings, and say you wanted to do facebook.com and redirect them to there, you'd put facebook.com and put your address 192.168.0.5 in my case, say settings, start your fake access point, and then you do Phishing Manager and clone Facebook. So when they connect to your computer via that address, well, basically when they go to facebook.com, it'll instead connect to the IP address you put here, your computer, and because it's done that, this basically is hosting this fake Facebook page. So this is basically a web host you can think of. Okay, so Phishing Manager is kind of like a web host. You can host a web page via your own machine, and then you'd use the normal proxies to make them connect to that web host using whatever method you want. So that's what Phishing Manager is. It's basically a web host to host a web page. Let me stop this server. Now, you don't have to clone website, although that's usually the best way of doing it. You could enable beef, like I mentioned before. The beef framework, if you know how to use beef, I'm not going to go into that now because that would take a whole video on its own, if not a set of videos, to be honest. It's quite a big program, got a lot to it. If you wanted to enable beef and you wanted to get a beef hook into them to use beef, you could use this, which means whenever they visit a web page, or whenever they visit this web page which you're hosting via the proxies you've set up, then it'll also have a beef hook in them. So I could clone, like I've just said, I've made a fake Facebook page and I've cloned it on my machine, so 192.168.0.5. Okay. As well as clone that website, I could also enable beef. Now you can, because you notice that's square and the other options are circle, you can enable beef with any of the circle options, but you can only have one of the circle options enabled. Okay, but you can enable beef with any of them if you want, as well as it. So I could host my fake Facebook page to capture their details on my machine, and I could also have a beef hook running, so when they connect to my fake Facebook page, I'll also have a beef session running. Okay. Now another, let me turn beef off for now, don't want to confuse you too much. As well as website clone, think of Phishing Manager as your web host to remember how to host a web page for use with the proxies. You could also set a directory, which means on Kali or on most Linuxes, you've got a directory var, which is the root, var www, and if you start Apache and you have an index.html page here, then that site will run. And a lot of the times, some of the programs you'll use within Kali, when you make a fake web page, it will get put into this folder, var www. So if you want to host that directory, if you've already got pages set up in there, you can do it here. Instead of cloning a website, you just host that directory basically. Or you could simply make an HTML page by writing the HTML code here and then starting the server hosting that page. So Phishing Manager is basically a host to host a phishing site of your choosing, whether that's raw HTML code which you want to type in, or some HTML pages which you've downloaded from somewhere or made yourself with another program, and you've put in this directory, or any directory you put in here, let's be honest. Or you could just clone a website like I showed you earlier. Whichever option you chose, you'd then start server. And with whichever option you did choose, you could also enable beef as well. When you enable beef, you get given an URL which you call a beef hook. So when they visit the website in question, which would be our hosted site in this question, it would then use that URL in the background of the web page, so they don't know it's running, which it uses to connect you to beef. You put that URL in here. Beef actually supplies you with that URL. So if you're not familiar with beef, don't worry about this bit, I don't want to confuse you. But you can use beef with any of these hosted options. So you can host a raw HTML page by typing in the HTML code, or host pages in a directory. This is your default Apache directory, but you can put any directory. Or clone a website and host it on your own computer. Now this is the IP address you will host it from, which obviously will usually be your own local IP address, being your own computer. So basically Phishing Manager is a way to host a web page. Once you're hosting your web page, you'd use the appropriate proxy which you've chosen in settings to force them to connect to that web page, like I showed you with pumping proxy, it was with DNS spoof settings. So if they go to facebook.com, for example, I want them to go to this IP address instead, which I'd put 192.168.0.5, which is my IP address, to reflect this. So I start that server, so when they go to facebook.com, if I put that here, they'd instead come to this server, which is hosting a fake Facebook page, and I'd capture details. Obviously you can put anything here, google.com, etc. Okay, that's what Phishing Manager does. It hosts a web page for use with your proxies. Okay, I'm sure you can begin to see the more powerful options of Wifi-Pumpkin now. Another one is Windows Update. It's another nice option. Now what this does, it doesn't only offer you a Windows Update attack, it offers Java Update. It used to offer an Adobe Update, but that seems to have been taken out for now. Basically what you do, you choose your fake access point network adapter. So ours would be WLAN 1, not the one you're giving internet with, the one you're hosting your fake access point on. And then you choose, say, Windows Update. And once I connect your fake access point, it'll pop up saying there's a Windows Update available. And they click on it and it'd run that Windows Update. Or you could have Java Update. So when they connect to the fake access point, it'd say there's a Java Update available. Hoping they'd click it to update their Java. But really, if you click this button here, browse, it'd run whatever file you select here. So you'd select a RAT or Trojan, remote access tool, which would give you access to their computer. I'm sure you know what Trojan or RAT is. So you select your RAT or Trojan here, select the network adapter which is hosting your fake access point, choose the update type you want to offer them, then start server. So when they connect to the access point, which you'd set up in Wifi-Pumpkin like normal, you'd start your server. When they connect, it'll pop up saying you need to update either Windows or Java. And once they select the option to update, Windows or Java, whichever one you selected, it'll download this file instead of a Windows Update or Java Update. So they think they're updating Windows or Java, but really it'd be running whatever file you put here, a Trojan or something. There's a lot of software in Kali which you can use to generate Trojans, such as MSF Venom, Backdoor Factory, etc. Even Social Engineer Toolkit can generate Trojans. So if you want to look at those options, see what Trojans you can generate, or you could download a Trojan off the internet, a famous rat perhaps, and you could host that here, an executable for example, and it would download it. They'd think it would give it the appropriate name, so they'd think they're updating Windows, but it would really be running that rat or Trojan. So you'd select the Trojan, select the network adapter that reflects your fake access point, not your internet connection. Select the update type you want to offer the people who connect to a fake access point, and then start server. Okay, and then anyone who it offers the update to, it'll be reflected here, and whether they accept the update or not. So you can follow what's happening basically. So yeah, I want to exit. So that's the server options. It's two other attack options you can add on to the proxy options basically. So, just a quick overview. Once you set up your fake access point, go to settings, just begin setting it up. You put your access point name, whether it's a fake open Wi-Fi access point, open Wi-Fi network, or an evil twin, the name of someone else's access point who you want to clone. The adapter you want to host the fake access point on, not your internet adapter. Set up any options you want here. For the time being, for beginners should I say, it's probably best to leave the default options, these two, HTTP requests and HTTP authentication. Just leave those connected and no other ones ticked, I mean. Set up your IP range. If you're not sure what to do here, just make sure when you do ifconfig to check your local IP address of your internet adapter, just make sure these addresses, the first number's different. So if yours begins with 192, choose a class range here that reflects a different number. So if mine was 192, I could use 10 for example. I wouldn't want to choose 192 because that's the same as my internet one, so I'd have to choose another one. Okay, and then I'd save settings. So once you've done that and set up your access point, you then go down to plugins, choose the appropriate proxy you want to use, which is your attack method basically. And then if you want any man in the middle software to run as well to capture their internet activity, you choose that option. Usually it's best to just choose one of these, but you could choose both if you wanted, but that's a bit more advanced. Once you choose your proxy option, you go down to that option here. If you choose the bottom one, remember the options are here and not on the side. So say pumpkin proxy, I'll go down here, choose whichever options I want. If the option I choose as a setting, I'd set it up here. Once that's done and all my fake access point set up, I've chosen my proxy type, I've chosen if I want to have any man in the middle software running as well. I then press start to start it, and then I can view the activity and that as it happens. Okay. Now we've also got a modules menu. Now this gives you the basic options you have with things such as Aircrack Suite. You can, if you're doing an Evil Twin for example, you can select Wi-Fi de-authentication, the top option, and you get this window. Each option will give you a different window, and this enables you to use your, before you'd make your fake access point, you could scan it. You obviously wouldn't choose your internet one, you choose the one you're making your fake access point with. You could, let me do this, let me stop my fake access point. You could use this to de-authenticate them, like you would with MDK3 for example. So I could start scan. Give it time to connect. It does actually seem to be working for some odd reason. Let me try my internet enable one. Well, no, I can't imagine that being right. That's odd because this is actually usually, I tried this just before I did the video, so I don't know what's happening there, but usually you choose your fake access point one, start scan. It's exactly the same as if you did it with MDK3 or Air Replay using the Aircrack Suite. It'd give you the different access points in range. You could choose one and then choose send attack, and what that would do is try and de-authenticate them, disconnect them from their access point. So you could do the Evil Twin attack for example, but you could do exactly the same thing using MDK3 or Air Replay, which is one of the Aircrack Suite tools, which I have done videos on using them. So that's just another way of doing a quick deauthentication attack, although it seems to be giving me problems at the moment. Although it didn't earlier, I've got to say, so I'm not sure what's happening there. But I could do exactly the same thing with my command line to serve the same purpose. There are other options. Again, I'd choose my fake access point adapter. And that is working. Now, what this does, this actually shows any devices that are trying to connect to an access point that isn't available. So if the devices are looking for, I don't know, say I had my phone was looking for free Wi-Fi at my local coffee shop, but I wasn't in range, then this would be shown here. That's what a probe is. A probe request is devices that are looking for an access point that isn't available. And the reason you want to see that information is, say you had a device here which was trying to connect, it tells the name of what they're trying to connect to. So say I saw someone's Samsung Galaxy, for example, was trying to connect to Sainsbury's access point. I could then quickly make a fake access point called Sainsbury's access point, and obviously they'd instantly connect to it. So that's what a probe request does. Obviously there's no one in range who is searching for an access point that isn't available at the moment, but if there was, that's a good way to get them to connect, because you know they're already looking for that access point, so you just basically quickly make it using Wifi-Pumpkin and they'll automatically connect. That's always a good window, probe requests. Again, you can do all this in Aircrack Suite using AeroDump. That's what that does. If we go down modules again. Now I'm sure you can start to see a theme with these ones. These are all extra type options which will aid in getting people to connect to your access point. DHCP, this is quite advanced actually. Once they're connected to you, you can have DHCP starvation. What it does is a DHCP address is basically when you assign someone an IP address, say 10.0.0.1 in the range we chose up here, you get 255 of them, well 254 actually, so 10.0.0.1, 10.0.0.2 all the way to 10.0.0.254. 255 is actually set for the broadcast address, so it's up to 254. What this does, if you press start attack, it actually uses all 254 IP addresses. So there isn't an IP address for them to connect to. Now you may think, well, what's the point in that? But there is some advanced attacks you can use basically to do this. Just starve the DHCP so there's no IP address available. I won't go into reasons for that because it really will confuse you. But a quick example is, say you had one person connected and you didn't want anyone else to attack. You could then use DHCP starvation to use up the other IP addresses available. So you can concentrate just on that one person, but that's not actually the main use of it. But if you do know the main use of DHCP starvation, which means using up all the IP addresses so there's no more available, then that's what this window does. If you don't, I really wouldn't worry about this window. Okay. Art Poisoner. Now an art poisoner is what gives you your main man in the middle. All your man in the middle software will usually poison the ARP tables or ARP addresses. What it does, it basically puts you in the middle of them and the router. The same as any other man in the middle software. But this is a way to do it without using any of the additional man in the middle softwares. You can basically do it manually. Usually if you want to run software externally from Wifi-Pumpkin and don't want to use the built-in man in the middle software, you could poison the ARP tables yourself and then use that external software whilst running your fake access point. So you're not using these man in the middle softwares. Perhaps you've got a more powerful one such as man in the middle F, which I really like. Perhaps you want to run man in the middle F. You could untick these options, get them to connect to a Pumpkin proxy for example, start it up. Once they're connected, well, before they're connected actually, you'd start your ARP attack, and once they're connected, it'll put you in the middle of them and the fake access point. And then I could run man in the middle F software, which is a powerful man in the middle software, for a terminal window. That's what that does. Allows you to externally use man in the middle software. Okay. And the last one is DNS spoof. We saw that earlier when we was using the option in Pumpkin Proxy. Remember when I showed you how to do DNS spoof with the phishing page, which, quickly bring that up, was the way in which you hosted your different websites to the fake Facebook page we made. You'd basically, if they type in facebook.com, it'd send them to the IP address you put in. This is basically another way of doing that. Say if you didn't want to do it through Pumpkin Proxy, you could do it through here by setting it up here. Set up your target, facebook.com. You put your router in here, and then you put in the address but they're being redirected to, your local address for example. That's what that does. Basically it says it here nicely. It redirects traffic from any domain, such as facebook.com or whatever you want to put in here. You could put in a list of domains, and if they go to any of them, it will redirect them to the IP address you've put, which presumably you'll be hosting a web page on using the Phishing Manager, or hosting a fake update on using Windows Update. Okay, so obviously you set that up and start attack. Again, these options are a bit more advanced. If you're totally new to Wifi-Pumpkin and Evil Twin or Rogue access points or any type of fake access point attacks, I'd suggest first playing around with the proxies and just their individual options, and then build upon that as you get more competent with their uses, starting with Pumpkin Proxy as it's the easiest one to use, although in a way it's just as powerful as the others, in a way. Something I haven't shown you, on Pumpkin Proxy you also got a login tab here, which will show you all the different plugins you've chosen to run. Once your access points running and you've got a client connected, you can actually log what that plugin is doing. Say you had the DNS spoof plugin running, it would log what's happening. If they're using the DNS spoof plugin at that time, it would show you what's happening, etc. So it's a nice little log of the plugins as they're being used, and that's just for the Pumpkin Proxy. Although the other proxies, I didn't actually notice that before. TCP proxy anyway, that's got its own logs as well, which obviously I can't go to at the moment because I haven't got that proxy chosen in my plugins. But if I did, I could go there and check the details of these plugins as they're happening, as they're being used. SSL Strip doesn't have a logger. Seems the log is here in this little window. So as the different plugins that we showed you in the drop down window here were being used on this proxy, it would show you what's happening here as the plugins are being used. Or likewise you could view the man in the middle, see what's happening here if you had one of the man in the middle software is running. So that's the basic of Wifi-Pumpkin. So you can see the power of Wifi-Pumpkin. It's got a lot to it. Something else to note, you can actually turn the proxy server off if you want and just take a fake access point. You might be thinking, what's the point of that? But there are other proxies available which you can download, which you might prefer over the ones that are built into Wifi-Pumpkin. So you can make your fake access points using these settings, untick this, run your own proxy that you've downloaded, and then start your fake access point, and it uses Wifi-Pumpkin to host your fake access point and provide them with internet, but it uses your external proxy that you've downloaded instead of the ones here. Okay, so that's that. But like I said, what I will reiterate is, to start with, I'd definitely start with the Pumpkin Proxy option. Okay, I'll leave it at that. So that's Wifi-Pumpkin. I hope you now know how to use it, or at least how to use the basics. Please pay for it. As I said, you will use some other software to use some of the more advanced things, such as Backdoor Factory. but you should now have a good idea of what each option in Wifi-Pumpkin does. It's a great tool for fake access point needs. Thank you. Please like, share and subscribe. And or subscribe, should I say. Thank you.